Okay, here we go.
This is not going to work.
Good evening. I'm Phil Haslanger.
And I'm Michael Bryant.
And we're so happy you're with us here this evening, whether you're here with us in this beautiful sanctuary. Thanks so much to MemorialUCC for letting us use this space tonight. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or Zoom, we're glad to have you with us that way. This space feels awfully familiar. I'm not sure. Because we're in the era of COVID, in a normal time there'd be songs we would ask you to sing along with us. Please don't. Hum in your brain quietly. I'll sing your parts and just pretend you're singing along with me, but just do it internally, just so we can all be safe here. We understand, getting here, there's sometimes some rush and fuss and everything to get settled in. So I invite you just to kind of make that transition from wherever you were to this space here. Well, maybe just take a moment of silence and maybe take a breath.
The 13th century Persian poet and Sufi mystic Rumi has long transcended national borders, ethnic divides. And I set a portion of one of his poems to music. And we'll use that as a way to create an invitation for you, no matter what your faith tradition, no matter what experiences you've had, we can meet together tonight. Out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field. Out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. I'll meet you there. I'll meet you there. Out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field. Out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. I'll meet you there. I'll meet you there.
I grew up in a small city in northeast Wisconsin called Marinette. It was along the south shore of the Menominee River, just where it emptied into Green Bay. So keep that location in mind for a moment. I grew up with the creation story that comes out of the Hebrew Bible, and that's also common in the Christian tradition. Islam tells the creation story, but just a bit differently. But it's fairly similar to the story that I grew up with. Over time, I came to understand the idea that God created the universe in 6 days and created humanity in the image and likeness of God as not a literal historical thing, but it still framed my understanding of the origins of the world and of us. and it was good. But then I learned another creation story. It was a story set not in the beautiful garden by the Tigris and Euphrates rivers that flowed from Syria into Iraq, but at the mouth of the Menominee River, literally just down the street from where I grew up. In the Menominee tribal tradition, when the Great Spirit first made the earth, he also created a large number of spirits. And one of the good spirits took a bear to the mouth of the Menominee River, and as the bear swam up the river, it changed its form into what became the first human, who then called other animals and fish and birds into human form, and they became the clans of the Menominee tribe. My understanding of how different spiritual traditions form the story of creation began to widen, as did my understanding that many of us share some common themes in our story and in our understanding of the divine. Today we gather on land originally inhabited by the Ho-Chunk tribe, and in their story of creation, the divine is called Earthmaker. While the details differ, there is still the creation of water and light and vegetation and people. Earthmaker said, "As things are just as I wish them, I shall make a human being in my own likeness." So he took a piece of clay and made it into himself and breathed into its mouth. Does this sound familiar? Caitlin Curtis, a woman who blends her Potawatomi heritage with her Christianity, notes in her book, Native, all the tribes of Turtle Island, that's North America, have creation stories. We've been asking for centuries what life is like at the beginning.
The sense of the natural world that we all share, no matter which story you choose, is a good starting point for us tonight. And this song sort of takes us into that natural world. Praise the Lord of all creation, Spirit of unending love. Praise the gift of life she brings us, love and life combine as one. When you see the snow-capped mountain reaching for the rising sun, you can feel the mighty power, love and life combine as one. Kindness of a stranger reaching out a helping hand, you can feel the love that's there in every woman, child, and man. When you see the flowing wheat field shining golden in the sun, you can feel the endless power, love and life combine as one. From the love of the Great Spirit came the first strong spark of life, flowing through the land and ocean, bringing forth all forms of life. We must all perfect this power, 1,000 ways to kneel and pray. We must all believe it truly, that love and life will find a way. In the eyes of friends and family, in the hearts of all we know, burns a fire of their desiring to let life live and let love grow. When you see the evening sunset blazing glory in the sky, you can feel love all around us, bringing life to you and I. In this hour that we're together, praising love in word and song, raise a prayer to life and love, love and life combine as one, love and life combine as one.
This program grows out of the work over the last 15 or so years of Reverend Betty Stuckey and her spouse, folk singer Noel Paul Stuckey. Betty had studied theology and was concerned about how often religion was used to fuel violence, a fuel poured on top of disputes over land and money and power. The same has been true of how race and ethnicity and gender have all been used to fuel violence. We know that none of our faith traditions are perfect in this regard. Each tradition has people out at the edges who decide that violence is either a way to force others to submit to their beliefs or that religion is a useful tool in exploiting and oppressing others. We in the Christian faith tradition know there are also sharp divides among us about what it means to follow Jesus. Still, there's a common theme across faith traditions, as well as humanist traditions, that is an antidote to that fuel of hatred. That theme is the power of love. For Christians, there's a line in the New Testament from the first letter of John to the very early Christian communities that speaks to this. Whoever does not love does not know God, for God is love. And John went on, if we love one another, God lives in us. Tonight we will explore how different traditions may understand the divine in different ways, yet we'll focus on the commonality that many share. We hope that what you hear this evening might inspire you to learn a bit more about a faith tradition different than your own, and to deepen your understanding of what you believe and how you live it out. Wherever you are in that vast expanse of beliefs, we hope you will approach this evening with a sense of cultural humility, not thinking that any one of us has all the answers. As Presbyterian preacher Anna Carter Florence said in a sermon, maybe we know God best when we have to listen to a person different than ourselves. So we come back to that core value in so many belief systems, love. That's what can bind us together. And Noel and Betty wrote a song about that.
One flame, many candles, one sky, many stars, one sea, many rivers, one love, so many hearts. We live in the same house on different floors. I've got my window and you got yours. We've each got a doorway that leads to the hall, but the rooms are so cozy and the doors are so small. One flame, many candles, one sky, many stars, one sea, many rivers, one love, so many hearts. So mostly we sit by our windows and stare, and maybe we wonder what's happening out there. Is there something we're missing? Something we ought to see? Something bigger than life? Oh yeah, something bigger than me. One flame, many candles, one sky, many stars, one sea, many rivers, one love, so many hearts. I'm reading a book I found on the shelf. It's a mystery that I have written myself. I'm in the last chapter, not sure what's in store, but I'm thinking it ends with a knock on the door. One flame, many candles, one sky, many stars, one sea, many rivers, one love, so many hearts. One flame, many candles, one sky, many stars, one sea, many rivers, one love. So many hearts.
story of the impact the book and the movie Life of Pi had on Noelle and her a few years ago. The lead character in the book is a teenager whose name is Piscine, or Pi for short. In one scene in the book, Piscine, who was raised as a Hindu, and his parents are being confronted by a Christian priest, a Muslim imam, and a Hindu scholar known as a pundit. Piscine had been faithfully attending services in his own Hindu temple, as well as at the church and at the mosque, and each of the religious leaders were heatedly claiming that Piscine belonged to their religion and only their religion. When Piscine was asked to comment on the argument, he quoted Gandhi, who said that all religions are true. "I just want to love God," Piscine told him. Betty said that's just how she felt during her 4 years at the Harvard Divinity School. "I just want to love God." She found the choices of which God overwhelming and confusing. She was filled with questions I think many folks wrestle with in this time when so many people feel less attached to religious institutions, but still seek to understand what a sense of divinity might mean in their lives. Which God? The Christian God, depending on who you spoke to, was angry or vengeful, compassionate, forgiving. Who was right?
In Islam, the divine is most often called Allah, and Muhammad is considered the prophet or messenger of Allah. This is a faith that values prayer, caring for those in need, and submitting to the divine will.
The Jewish people focus on belief in one God who cares for God's people, and there is a calling to repair the world. 3 faiths, 3 different takes on the divine. Could there be more than one God? Or could the many conceptions of God all lead to one divine being?
What about Buddhism, founded by Siddhartha Gautama, who walked away from a wealthy inheritance to find enlightenment within? Buddhism does not have a divine being as such, but embraces teachings about the impermanence of life, compassion for others, and the liberation of each person. Teachings that are common to a lot of faith traditions.
Or Hinduism, which is formed from diverse traditions and embraces many manifestations of the one divinity called Brahman, the supreme spirit, the ultimate reality. Those manifestations are often called gods. Hinduism is called the oldest living major religion and has a rich tradition of spiritual practices.
And how about the Sikhs, who focus on the oneness of God and all humanity? The nature religions that connect us to the richness of the world around us, or the Eastern religions like Taoism, Shinto, and Confucianism that have built deep philosophical and ethical systems that teach love and respect for others and for the traditions of family and culture. Then there are the modern faith traditions like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or the Baha'i.
Betty said that gradually she began to realize that God lives in a land beyond language, in a land beyond limits, that God is far larger than our little imaginations can take us. Some people talk about the images of God we have as metaphors, since none of us can really capture the essence of the divine in our own minds. Think of some of the metaphors we hear: God, goddess, creator, spirit, father, mother, grounded being, wind, bush that burns and is not consumed. It's not that any one metaphor is better than another. It's that some metaphors speak to us and some speak to others. And together we get glimpses of the divine, but never the total reality. No one has an exclusive claim on God, and at their best, the world's faiths connect us to that same ultimate reality, the reality of compassion and caring, the reality of love.
The next song is a medley of 2 songs. The first one was written by Leslie Duncan, and it's called Love Song. And I've changed some of the lyrics to that song to better focus on what we're talking about tonight. In the middle is a short song that I wrote based on a meditation prayer that I learned while learning to meditate. And what's interesting about it is that I studied meditation with both a Zen Buddhist and a Franciscan monk, and they both used parts of this in their meditations. The words I have to say may well be simple, but they're true. They came to teach us love, but now it's up to me and you. Love is the opening door. Love is what they came here for. No one could offer you more. Do you know what I mean? Have your eyes really seen? Breathe in, and as you exhale, fill this room with hope. Breathe in, and as you exhale, fill this land with peace. Breathe in, and as you exhale, fill this world with love. Love is the antidote to all the evil in this land. So open up your heart and you'll begin to understand. Love is the key we must turn. Love is the flame we must burn. Love is the lesson we must learn. Do you know what I mean? Have your eyes really seen?
Valerie Carr is one of the vibrant voices of our time, advocating for the kind of love we're talking about tonight. Revolutionary love, she calls it. Valerie is from the Sikh tradition, and she tells the story of its first teacher, Guru Nanak, who lived in India from the mid-1400s to the mid-1500s. He was troubled by the violence he saw around him, violence between the Hindus and the Muslims, tensions that continue to this day. Valerie tells the story of Guru Nanak going to a river for 3 days and returning with a vision of oneness called Ek Ankar, one supreme reality, the oneness of all humanity. I see no stranger, he said. I see no enemy. Love enabled him to see with new eyes, just what Michael was singing about. In her book, See No Stranger, a memoir and manifesto of revolutionary love, Valerie writes this: the call to love beyond our own flesh and blood is ancient. It echoes down to us on the lips of indigenous leaders, spiritual teachers, and social reformers through centuries. Valerie goes on. Guru Nanak called us to see no stranger, Buddha to practice unending compassion, Abraham to open our tent to all, Jesus to love our neighbors, Muhammad to take in the orphan, the female Hindu poet Mirabai to love without limit. They all expanded the circle of who counts as one of us, and therefore who is worthy of our care and concern. These teachings were rooted in the linguistic, cultural, and spiritual context of their time, but they spoke of a common vision of our interconnectedness and interdependence. Valerie quotes these sayings. It is the ancient Sanskrit truth that we can look upon anyone or anything and say, Tadvamasi, I am that. It's the African philosophy, Ubuntu, I am because you are. It's the Mayan precept in La Ketch, you are my other me. Valerie quotes these sayings, and then Noel Paul Stuckey used that theme of revolutionary love in a song he wrote called Revolution One by One. Here he is singing with some of the images that help carry the message.
I'm gonna start a revolution. I'm gonna take it to the street. I'm gonna smile at every solitary person that I meet. I'm gonna wave a toast stranger, no matter where they're from. I'm gonna start a revolution. I'm gonna win it one by one. Now the secret of this movement I'm about to share with you. You just pick somebody that you don't know, that's all you have to do. You don't need no other weapon than that smile upon your face. Just say hello, let them know. We're all part of the human race. And if you should count, as I'm sure you will, some disbelieve in cynic who is disbelieving still. We're gonna open all these windows, we're gonna unlock every door, we're gonna sweep out every corner, we're gonna mop up every floor till he goes a dancing in the jaw of the dragon, sleeping in the lion's den, dreaming in the arms of angels. Yeah, and he falls in love again. Totally disarm the enemy before the fighting starts. Hey, we're gonna laugh in the face of evil. That misdirected fool is gonna start a revolution. Yeah, we're gonna win it, me and you. But we're a raggle-jaggle army, got no uniform or guns. Still been caught by coincidence, so maybe we're the ones to take this revolution to the street and smile at every solitary person that we meet. We're gonna wave at total strangers, no matter where they're from. I'm gonna start a revolution. Yeah, come on. We're gonna win it one by
And then there was Black Elk. Black Elk was a holy man of the Oglala Lakota tribe in North America. He lived for about 88 years, from 1863 to 1950, and he served as sort of a bridge between the religion of his tribe and the Christians that he often worshiped with. In the words of his grandson, he was equally adept at praying with his rosary as with his pipe. In the book, Black Elk Speaks, he says this: "Then I was standing on the highest mountain of them all, and round about beneath me was the whole hoop of the world. And while I stood there, I saw more than I can tell, and I understood more than I saw, and the shape of all shapes as they must live together like one being. And I saw that the sacred hoop of my people was one of many hoops that made one circle, wide as daylight and as starlight. And in the center grew one mighty flowering tree to shelter all the children of one mother and one father. And I saw that it was holy." So when I read Black Elk, it inspired this song. Hoops within hoops, great circle of love. Bring all hoops together, combine them with love. He climbed the great mountain, and what did he see? A circle of love connects you to me. Hoops within hoops, great circle of love. Bring all hoops together, combine them with love. He climbed the great mountain, and what did he see? A circle of love connects you to me. Black Elk was holy and Black Elk was wise. He led the Lakota, a great northern tribe. He once had a vision so real and so true, how a circle of love connects me to you. Hoops within hoops, great circle of love. Bring all hoops together, combine them with love. He climbed a great mountain. What did he see? A circle of love connects you to me. In the center where stillness and motion are one, a spirit tree grows, shines like the sun, with branches outreaching so wide and so tall. One mother, one father, to nurture us all. Hoops within hoops, great circle of love. Bring all hoops together, combine us with love. He climbed the great mountain. What did he see? A circle of love connects you to me. A circle of love.
We keep talking about love tonight, and that's because it's so central to all the faith and ethical traditions of our world. Notice the similarity of these themes across space and time. Let's start with the ancient religion of Hinduism. Do not do to others what would cause pain if it was done to you.
Or this from Buddhism. A state that is not pleasing or delightful to me, how could I inflict that upon another?
From Confucianism, what you do not wish for yourself, do not do to others.
From Taoism, regard your neighbor's gain as your own gain, and your neighbor's loss as your own loss.
In Judaism, the book of Leviticus in the Torah says, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And then in the Talmud, that ancient book of Jewish law, there is this from the wise teacher Hillel: that which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. This is the whole Torah, and the rest is commentary. Go and learn it.
Yeah. That's my favorite. For Christians, the words of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount contained in the Gospel according to Matthew has a familiar ring. In everything, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, for this is the law and the prophets.
And in Islam, from one of the hadiths, the sayings of Muhammad, there is an account of telling someone seeking the way to heaven, as you would have people do to you, do to them. And what you dislike to be done to you, don't do to them. And on they go. There are versions in Sikhism and Wicca, in Baha'i and the African religions. It's a central ethical principle in humanism. So can we not all come together with this as a starting place?
So when we were researching all these golden rules, and there are far more than we were able to share tonight, and I encourage you to go seek those out, it inspired this song. Let's start here and let's start now. The golden rule will show us how to all be sisters and brothers too, when we all work humbly with the golden rule. The rule is simple and the rule is clear. Let all God's children have ears to hear. We're on a pathway to a better world. when we all live humbly by the golden rule. Take my hand and I'll take yours. We'll live in peace with no more wars. It will come true if you believe, and we all live humbly by the golden rule. The rule is simple and the rule is clear. Let Yahweh's children have ears to hear. We're on a pathway to a better world when we all live humbly by the golden rule. Let's do our best to understand the different faiths of every land. Give love a chance to heal our wounds, and all live humbly by the golden rule. The rule is simple and the rule is clear. Let Allah's children have ears to hear. We're on a pathway to a better world when we all live humbly by the golden rule. When we all live humbly by the golden rule.
When Ibu Patel was a young man, he had a chance to meet the Dalai Lama. And I think his experience is useful to help us realize that to respect and honor other people's faith traditions does not mean we have to give up our own. Here's how he tells his story in his book, Acts of Faith. Ibu grew up the son of Indian parents in a Chicago suburb. He was raised as a Muslim, spent time as a college student working at a Catholic worker house in Champaign, Illinois, explored Buddhism, was best friends with a Jewish man named Kevin. The two of them traveled to India and immersed themselves in the rich culture and pluralistic religious scene of that nation. And they had a chance to meet the Dalai Lama. Like Ibu, Kevin had studied Buddhism, but then was reconnecting with his Jewish roots. The Dalai Lama said to him, "Judaism and Buddhism are very much alike. You should learn more about both and become a better Jew." Then the Dalai Lama turned to Ibu, and Ibu was getting nervous. He really had no particular religious identity at that point, although he was seeking one. How could he tell the Dalai Lama that he was a failure at trying Buddhism? He could not meditate the way he thought he should. "You are a Muslim," the Dalai Lama said to Ibu, having been clued in ahead of time. Ibu swallowed hard. "Yes," he said, as the Dalai Lama giggled at his obvious discomfort. "Islam is a very good religion," the Dalai Lama said. "Buddhists and Muslims lived in peace in Tibet for many centuries." They talked a while longer. And then the Dalai Lama said this to Kevin and to Ibu: "Religions must dialogue, but even more, they must come together and serve others. Service is the most important. And common values, finding common values between different religions. And as you study other religions, you must learn more about your own and believe more in your own." The organization that Ibu founded, the Interfaith Youth Corps, is built on those principles: learning while serving together, respecting each other as you delve deeper into your own tradition. I don't know where everybody here stands in terms of your belief, your religious identity, your spiritual path. Everyone is here probably in a little different place on our spiritual journeys. Some may have left the faith of our childhood and found nothing to replace it. Some may be pursuing a very personal inner spiritual life. Some may be perfectly content in the faith of their choosing. Some may have little interest in organized religion. When we learn about other religions, as the Dalai Lama told Ibu Patel and his friend Kevin, we do not need to take on the identity of that religion. We can deepen our own and perhaps discover a new path, but it's essential to acknowledge that faiths other than our own are legitimate paths to a sense of the divine. Reverend Dr. Otis Moss III, who's pastor at Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago, uses jazz as a metaphor for the richness we find in diversity, whether it's a diversity of cultures or a diversity of faith traditions. Each instrument in a jazz performance brings a different perspective. Each one gets a space for a solo, but together they create a vibrant mood. As Moss said, the bass never tells the drum, "You gotta sound like me." The bass says, "I have my own unique perspective, and the sound I bring to the table is something that contributes to the entire sound, and we work on this together." What comes forth is a blend that highlights each instrument, yet offers a variety of harmonies. We're talking tonight mostly about religion, about the beliefs that too often divide, but could also bring us together in a tapestry that illuminates what is distinctive without any one thread dominating another. We know that if we start feeling superior to people who are different from us, we begin to go down that path of division. So we need to approach all of this with that sense of humility. Betty Stuckey tells a wonderful story about learning the kind of cultural humility that is a vital part of what we need in our lives if we're going to let love rule. Betty's story comes from a time when she was the chaplain at Northfield Mount Hermon School in northwestern Massachusetts, a co-ed prep school that describes itself as a secular school that affirms religious diversity. There were about 9 different spiritual life groups on the campus, but the numerous Muslim students on campus refused to come to the monthly interfaith service. They were concerned about blending their faith with other religions. So Betty began to use the term multi-faith. And then one year over the winter, a Muslim student, we'll call him Assad, was killed in a car accident in Saudi Arabia. He was a very popular student, so there was much grief. Well, let's have Betty pick up the story from here.
And so when the school came back after the winter break, I gathered the Muslims together to see if we could come up with some good way to honor him, to have some kind of memorial service. Now, I had done lots of memorial services, and I knew the right way, the only way, no other way, to do this service. It was clear. We would have candles, flowers, readings, music. It was obvious that was the way to do a memorial service. Well, they had other ideas. First of all, the family of the deceased does not necessarily attend the service. Readings are only from the Hadith and the Quran, and only a Muslim may speak. Music is not generally played, and flowers were irrelevant. So the Muslim students said, "No service. It's not what was done in our country. We aren't interested. We don't want it. No." I said to them, "But Assad was a beloved member of this school community, and this is what we need to do to honor him." So back and forth we went, with very little progress being made on either side. And it was getting closer to be time to have the service for Assad or to not have the service for Assad. And we were beginning to talk more about whose faith traditions were right and whose were wrong instead of Assad. So, being the supposed grown-up of the group, I finally let go of my right way to do it, and I said, "Okay, no flowers, no music, no candles, no prayers. Now, can we have a service for Assad?" Finally, they agreed, but said they would not attend. They also agreed to music and candles, but only if we put them at the end of the service, because they wanted to video the service and send it to Assad's parents, and if that was at the end, they could just cut it out. So the day of the service arrived, and everyone from the school came, including many students from other schools that had known Assad. And a few minutes before we began, much to my astonishment, in walked our Muslim students. They not only attended, but they participated. Assad's roommate came up with his guitar and he played a beautiful song that he had written for Assad. And Assad's friends came up and they stood shoulder to shoulder in front of the microphone, and each one stepped forward and said something about his relationship with Assad. One of them read from the Quran in Arabic, and they all lit a candle at the end of the service. So the video was sent to the family intact, and I gave thanks that we had been able to get over our obstinacy and our fear and our stubbornness to see the validity in somebody else's religious practices. It was a beautiful and poignant service, and we all learned much about respect and understanding.
So after hearing Betty's story and thinking about that, you know, it's no secret that they were celebrating life, the life of this person, not their death. They were celebrating the love that they shared, the good times and the bad. And so while thinking about that, it inspired this song. Celebrate love with us, celebrate life, celebrate the joys we shared, the struggle and the strife, honoring our loved ones through the shadow and the light. Celebrate love with us, celebrate life. They're always with us right here in our hearts, always dear to us, always part of us. The memory sweetens each part of our lives. Give thanks for the time spent together and celebrate love with us, celebrate life, celebrate the joys we shared, the struggle and the strife, honoring our loved ones through the shadow and the light. Celebrate love with us, celebrate life. We'll conquer the sadness with memories of joy, love they shared with us, love they gave to us. The memory enriches each day of our lives. Give thanks for the time spent together and celebrate love with us, celebrate life, celebrate the joys we shared, the struggle and the strife, honoring our loved ones through the shadow and the light. Celebrate love with us, celebrate life.
As Betty's story suggested, crossing the divides that separate us is not easy, even when people of goodwill are trying to work together. It's even harder when goodwill is in short supply. We know the way some people use religion to divide us from one another. We know the trails of bloodshed across the centuries. We know how hate tries to overcome love. We know that when we face someone we see as an enemy, someone we think wants to hurt us, it's hard to reach back to that common thread and let it conquer hate. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. knew how hard that was for himself and for the people who looked to him for leadership. So these words remain as powerful today as when he spoke them at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama in 1957. Pastor and Judge Everett Mitchell from Madison will read them for us.
Another way that you love your enemy is this. When the opportunity presents itself for you to defeat your enemy, that is a time which you must not do it. There will come a time in many instances when the person who hates you the most, the person who has misused you the most, the person who has gossiped about you the most, the person who has spread false rumors about you the most, there will come a time when you will have an opportunity to defeat that person. It might be in terms of a recommendation for a job. It might be in terms of helping that person to make some move in life. That's the time you must do it. Help them, not defeat them. That is the meaning of love. In the final analysis, love is not the sentimental something that we talk about. It is not merely an emotional something. Love is creative, understanding goodwill for all men. It is a refusal to defeat any individual. When you rise to the level of love, of its great beauty and power, you seek only to defeat evil systems. Individuals who happen to be caught up in that system you love, but you seek to defeat the system.
Conflicts over land and power get wrapped in the robes of religion is the land of Israel and Palestine. The three faiths that descended from Abraham have spent centuries battling over this relatively small piece of real estate, a land only as big as the state of New Jersey in our nation. But within the traditions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, there are also deep wells where they can find common ground. Remember those creation stories? Muslim, Jew, and Christian agree that God in his many names, the most holy, the eternal, Allah, Yahweh, Adonai, is one. Muslim, Jew, and Christian adhere to many of the same teachings, and yet even believing many of the same things, they have been and they are in violent opposition to each other. But listen now to their prayers. Hear the similarities in what they're asking for. First, Rabbi Bonnie Margulis, Executive Director of the Wisconsin Faith Voices for Justice, which hosts the Sacred Sites program, where people visit and explore a variety of faith traditions, including here one recent Sunday. This prayer for our human family comes from the prayer book of Reformed Judaism.
Grant peace to our world, goodness and blessing, mercy and compassion, life and love. Inspire us to banish forever hatred, war, and bloodshed. Help us to establish forever one human family, doing your will in love and peace. O God of peace, bless us with peace.
Then Nasra Wahaley, a Muslim woman who grew up in Somalia and came to Madison 32 years ago. She now represents a part of Madison on the Common Council, and she has her own consulting business called Empathy for Equity. This prayer is based on what is called Surah Al-Hujurat, the 49th chapter and 13th verse of the Quran. She'll read it first in Arabic and then in English.
يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. O mankind, we created you from a single pair of male and a female, and made you into nations and tribes, that you may know each other, not that you may despise each other. Verily, the most honored of you in the sight of Allah is he who is the most righteous of you, and Allah has full knowledge and is well acquainted with all things.
Paul Brandeis Rauschenbusch. Paul grew up in Madison and now lives in New York City, where he is an executive with the Interfaith Youth Corps, the organization founded by Eboo Patel. This prayer was written by his great-great-grandfather, Walter Rauschenbusch, who was a minister in New York City and one of the architects of what was called the social gospel movement at the beginning of the last century.
A Christian prayer for peace. O God, grant us a vision of this city, fair as it may be, a city of justice where none shall prey upon the other, a city of plenty where vice and poverty shall cease to fester, a city of brotherhood where success is founded on service and honor is given to nobleness alone, a city of peace where order shall not rest on force, but on the love of all for each and all. Walter Rauschenbusch.
So did you hear the similarities between those three prayers? You know, it's amazing to hear that, but then over the course of the history, Muslim, Jew, and Christian have been in deep conflict. It seems like many religious people have forgotten the core of their religion, which is love. We heard a few lines that I put to music from the poet Rumi at the beginning of our time together. And here are some more words from Rumi. The religions are like one single being. If you refuse one, you refuse them all. In fact, there is only one light that appears through different windows and which reaches us through the persons of different teachers. All these lights stream from the same sun. So, can we help create a world where we can find common ground in our faith traditions instead of a wedge to divide or a weapon to hurt? And Noel Stuckey wrote a song, sort of an interesting little song, about can we bring peace to the valley? Peace in the valley, peace on the mountain and shore. Before you tell a man he's got a splinter in his eye, you better pull the log out of yours. Peace in the valley, peace on the mountain and shore. Before you tell a man he's got a splinter in his eye, you better pull the log out of yours. Well, there's a pigeon of peace in my backyard. He's the wrong kind of bird, but he tries so hard. One day I told him he should have been a dove. He cocked his head, he looked at me in love. And he said, peace in the valley, peace on the mountain and shore. Before you tell a man he's got a splinter in his eye, you better pull a log out of yours. Well, I remember the day the painted lady in town, she came to church to lay her burden down. The preacher turned his back, the room was filled. The words she spoke, I remember them still. She said, peace in the valley, peace on the mountain and shore. Before you tell a man he's got a splinter in his eye, you better pull the log out of yours. So if you meet a man in a pastel suit with an alligator Bible to match his boots, you might not like his style too much, but if he can reach a soul you could never touch, you gotta say, peace in the valley, peace on the mountain and shore. Before you tell a man he's got a splinter in his eye, you better pull the log out of yours. Peace in the valley, peace on the mountain and shore. Before you tell a man he's got a splinter in his eye, you better pull the log out of yours.
Of course, even within religions, there can be sharp divisions. We have trouble remembering the logs in our own eyes. We are surely seeing that within Christianity in the United States these days. But the same principles of compassion and love ought to be our touchstones. Barbara Brown Taylor wrote in her book in 2019 called Holy Envy, Finding God in the Faith of Others, where she described leading her college students and herself through an exploration of some of the world's religions. But she offered this insight into dealing with people who share her own tradition. When other Christians threaten or disappoint me, I work as hard to see God in them as in people of other or no faiths. It helps to remember that these are the same Christians whom I threaten and disappoint in equal measure. The only clear line I draw these days is this. When my religion tries to come between me and my neighbor, I'll choose my neighbor. Jesus never commanded me to love my religion. So we're left with two prayers from two people of different centuries, different faith traditions, dealing with different situations. Yet both prayers bring us to that place where we can cross the divides that separate us, share our stories, and seek common ground. The first one comes from Thich Nhat Hanh, a contemporary Buddhist voice. He was a voice for peace during the war in his native Vietnam and has taught people all over the world a way of seeing life that can bring people together. This passage attributed to Thich Nhat Hanh is read by Celeste Robbins, a Jewish woman from Madison, who has studied under him as a Buddhist teacher.
Let us be truly with each other. Let us be aware of the source of being common to us all and to all living beings. Evoking the presence of great compassion, let us fill our hearts with our own compassion towards ourselves and toward all living beings. Let us pray that all living beings realize that they are all siblings, all nourished from the same source of life. Let us pray that we ourselves cease to be the cause of suffering to each other. Let us live in a way which will not deprive other living beings of air, water, food, shelter, or the chance to live. With humility, with awareness of the existence of life and of the sufferings that are going on around us, let us pray for the establishment of peace in our hearts and on earth.
The second prayer is in the spirit of St. Francis of Assisi, a 13th century Italian Christian. Among the many things he is known for is crossing the violent divide between Christians and Muslims in his time. The words, I imagine, are familiar to many. Reverend Julia Berkey, pastor at Orchard Ridge United Church of Christ here in Madison, will read them as we think about how they resonate with all that we've heard tonight.
Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled, but to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in dying to self that we are born into eternal life.
The wording of each of these prayers is very different, but the meaning is the same. We are to love, help, pardon, guide, protect, and offer peace. We're left then with a question that authors Rachel Held Evans and Matthew Paul Turner posed in a beautiful children's book that came out recently called What is God Like? As they write at the end, this is a question that people all over the world wrestle with and has been answered in many different ways. Keep searching, they write. Keep wondering. Keep learning about God. But whenever you aren't sure what God is like, think about what makes you feel safe, what makes you feel brave, and what makes you feel loved. That's what God is like. We hope that as we all leave here tonight, you'll go out with the spirit of the words and music that we've shared. We hope you'll be able to apply some of the ideals of openness and cultural humility, not only to the many faith traditions in our world, but also to the many racial and ethnic and gender divisions we encounter around us. We hope you'll consider taking another step or two on our journey together. Could you find a way to learn just a bit more about a faith tradition other than your own? Could you devote some time to going deeper into your own beliefs? Could you perhaps find others to share this journey with you? We have a handout that many of you picked up on the way in with a few ways you might do that. And we'd appreciate any ideas you might have to offer to our list. Let's just hear one more bit of music and share a prayer as we end our time together.
One flame, many candles, one sky, many stars, one sea, many rivers, one love, many hearts, one world, many forests, one forest, many trees, one tree, many branches, one branch, many leaves, one life, many dreamers, one death, many tears, one word, many meanings, one hope, many years, one flame, many candles, one sky, many stars, one sea, many rivers, one love, many hearts.
Would you please join with me in a spirit of prayer with these words gathered by Betty Stuckey. Source of love, we come to you today with hope. Help us to learn to honor our differences while finding a language in which to speak of them together. Give us the strength to question our own traditions and the grace to respect the belief of others. May we come to honor, even in those we fear, the love that lives in us all. Show us how to speak to the best in our neighbors and attend to the worst in ourselves. May we soon see the day when this world will indeed be a place of peace and justice for everyone. That day begins here, now, with us. So go in peace, love one another, and thank you so much for being here tonight. Those of you who are here from Memorial know how delightful it is to have Michael bring his music to you so often. I am so lucky that I get a chance to share some of it with him along the way. And also those of you who are from Memorial know that it was an hour and 10 minutes, just like a regular Sunday service. Thanks for being. We'll stick around if people want to chat. We can stick around for a while. We'll actually put on our masks again to behave well.